Why does she keep asking about my genetics? The truth about her species shocked me. Dr. Elias Monroe adjusted the straps of his helmet as the shuttle descended toward the surface of the Valyrian planet, Atheris. He had seen many alien worlds in his career, but this one was different. The sky was tinted with a soft purple hue, and the ground shimmered faintly under the twin suns. There was something almost delicate about the planet, yet Elias could sense the tension in the air. The Valyrians, the species he had come to study, were rumored to be both intelligent and fragile, and their curiosity about humans had already made him uneasy. As he stepped onto the soft, metallic surface, he felt the weight of countless eyes on him. The Valyrians watched from a distance, their tall, slender forms moving gracefully among the crystalline structures that seemed to rise naturally from the ground. Their skin was pale but glowed slightly under the twin suns, and their eyes reflected colors that humans could barely distinguish. Elias had been warned about their subtle ways of observing, and he felt it immediately. Every movement he made was being catalogued, every word noted. "Welcome, Dr. Monroe," a soft voice called. Elias turned to see a young Valyrian child approaching. She was small, not more than 12 human years, with silvery hair that fell in waves down her back. Her eyes were the most striking, deep violet, almost luminescent, and fixed on him with an intensity that made him shiver. "I am Lyra," she said. "I will be your guide." Elias knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "Thank you, Lyra. It's an honor to meet you." Lyra tilted her head, studying him as if trying to look inside him. "Your body, your genes, they are different." "Why?" Elias froze. He had expected curiosity, but the way she phrased it made his skin crawl. "Different?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "You have traits we do not see in our people anymore. Your blood, your bones, even the way you heal. I must understand." Elias swallowed. He had read reports about the Valyrians' fascination with human genetics, but seeing it in action was unsettling. "I'm here to study your species, not the other way around," he said carefully. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no malice in her gaze. "I know, but I must ask, please. Tell me about your body, your history, your family." The shuttle behind him hissed as it cooled, a reminder that he was far from home, far from safety. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. "Why does it matter to you?" he asked. Lyra's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "It matters to my people. We have lost much. Our kind, we are fragile now. We cannot survive the way we used to. You humans, you thrive where others would perish. I must know how." Elias felt a pang of sympathy. He had read about their history. The Valyrians' genetic diversity had been collapsing for centuries. Their planet's environment, once hospitable, had become increasingly harsh, and their population had dwindled to fragile communities. Humans, by contrast, survived in some of the harshest conditions imaginable. It was part of what made them fascinating and dangerous to study in the wrong hands. He took a deep breath. "I cannot give you everything, Lyra, but I can show you some things. How humans adapt, how we heal, and why we survive." Her eyes lit up with a strange intensity. "Yes. Please." They walked together through the crystalline city. The structures shimmered with an inner light, almost like living glass, and Elias marveled at how the Valyrians had built a world that seemed so delicate yet held itself together perfectly. The citizens moved silently, gliding rather than walking, and all of them stared at him as if measuring his every step. As they entered a building that looked part laboratory, part library, Elias noticed intricate patterns on the walls. They weren't decorative. He realized they were some kind of data storage, glowing scripts that shifted and changed depending on who looked at them. Lyra guided him to a small room where a few Valyrian scientists worked. They paused and nodded at her presence, paying him only the briefest attention. Elias set down his equipment and looked at Lyra. "What is this place?" "This is where we learn," she said. "We record everything. We study every species that comes to us, but humans are different. Your genetics, they might help us survive. Elias frowned. Help you survive? What do you mean? Lyra hesitated. For the first time, there was a flicker of hesitation in her usually steady gaze. We have problems. Illnesses, weaknesses, things our people cannot overcome. We are looking for ways to endure. You have something we do not. Elias felt a chill. He had suspected their interest in humans was not entirely innocent, but hearing it confirmed made his stomach tighten. You're saying you want my DNA? She shook her head quickly. Not yet, not like that. We study first. We learn. I ask questions because understanding is safer than taking. But if we fail, we might try other ways. I hope it will not come to that. Elias studied her, noting the innocence in her tone despite the weight of her words. Lyra was a child, but her understanding of life and survival was deep beyond human standards. He had to be careful. One wrong move, and humans could become more than a curiosity, they could become a resource. Over the next few hours, he answered her questions in controlled ways. He showed her how human bones healed quickly after minor injuries, how the immune system responded to disease, and how humans could adapt to extreme temperatures. Lyra listened intently, her eyes never leaving him. She asked about human families, how children survived without constant supervision, and why humans could recover from starvation better than many other species. Elias began to notice something unnerving. Lyra's questions weren't just random curiosity, they were precise, almost like a checklist. She wanted specifics, not just general knowledge. Every time he mentioned a genetic trait or adaptation, she would record it on a small crystalline tablet she carried, her fingers moving quickly over the surface. "What are you writing?" he asked, a note of caution in his voice. "I am recording," she said simply, "for my people. We must remember, we must learn. You humans, you may be the key." The words hung in the air like a threat hidden behind innocence. Elias felt a tight knot in his chest. He had been trained to handle alien encounters, to negotiate and study without panic. But this felt different. It was as if the Valyrians were quietly testing him, measuring the value of a human being as if he were a rare artifact. When the day ended, Elias was shown to his quarters. The room was stark but comfortable, with a view of the shimmering city below. He sat on the edge of the bed, thinking. Humans were not the only species that survived by ingenuity, but they were unique in their resilience. That resilience had made him valuable in ways he hadn't fully realized until now. There was a soft knock on the door. Lyra entered, carrying her crystalline tablet. "May I ask one more question?" she said. Elias nodded warily. "One more. Your genetics, your blood, could it survive in our environment if you were exposed to our diseases and toxins?" Her gaze was steady, almost clinical. Elias hesitated. He understood what she was asking, but he chose his words carefully. "Humans adapt in ways your species cannot imagine. Some of us could survive conditions that might kill others, but it would not be easy." Lyra nodded as if this confirmed her expectations. "Good. You are strong. Perhaps your kind can help us. Perhaps your kind will help us survive." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. She said it so softly, yet the meaning was clear. She was not asking for permission. She was stating a possibility, one that could decide the fate of his species. He watched her leave, the soft glow of her skin fading into the violet light of the city. Elias sat back, realizing that this mission was no longer just about studying a new species. It was about survival, negotiation, and understanding exactly what it meant to be human, not just in the physical sense, but in the way humans endured, adapted, and thrived where others might fall. That night, as he recorded his observations in his journal, he wrote one line that captured his unease. "They are fragile, yet they see humans as the answer. And I am not sure if that is hope or danger." He knew tomorrow would bring more questions and more tests. Lyra would return, more insistent, more curious, and he would have to decide how much of himself and humanity he was willing to reveal. For the first time in his life, he felt the full weight of being human in a galaxy that might need him for reasons he could barely comprehend. As he closed his eyes and prepared to sleep, he could not shake the image of Lyra's violet eyes, glowing softly in the half-light. The child's gaze had a strange mix of innocence and calculation, and it left him with a lingering thought. Humans survive because we are clever, but cleverness can be dangerous, especially when someone else wants what we carry inside us. And somewhere deep in the city, the Valyrians watched, silent and patient, recording, waiting, hoping. The next morning, Elias woke to the soft violet light of Atheris filtering through the crystalline walls of his quarters. He felt a mix of anticipation and unease. Yesterday's encounter with Lyra had left him thinking deeply about the Valyrians' intentions. They were not just curious, they were calculating. Their fascination with human genetics went beyond scientific study. Elias understood that curiosity could be a dangerous thing when mixed with desperation. As he stepped out of his room, he noticed the city already awake. The Valyrians moved with their usual grace, gliding silently through the streets. Their eyes followed him, though few stopped to speak. It was a subtle reminder that he was always being watched. Lyra appeared almost immediately, as if waiting for him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "Good morning, Dr. Monroe," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I have more questions today. May I accompany you to the Central Archives?" Elias nodded. "Of course. Lead the way." The Central Archives were unlike any library he had ever seen. The room was enormous, filled with tall crystalline pillars that pulsed with light. Each pillar contained vast amounts of data, recording the history, knowledge, and biology of countless species that had come into contact with the Valyrians. Elias felt a sense of awe. This civilization had preserved information on a scale that humans could only dream of. Lyra guided him to a pillar marked with symbols he could not read. She touched the surface, and a series of images and holograms appeared, showing Valyrian biology in intricate detail. "Our species has survived for millennia," she explained. "But recently, we have become weaker. Our bodies cannot handle the extremes we once did. We fall ill more easily. Our bones break faster. Our immune system cannot fight some diseases. Humans are strong. You survive where others cannot." Elias felt a pang of both pride and concern. Humans were indeed adaptable, but he could sense the weight in her words. Lyra was not speaking out of idle curiosity. She was studying him as if he were a living manual on survival. "Why me?" he asked cautiously. "Why focus on humans? There are many species in the galaxy." Lyra hesitated for a moment, her small hand hovering over the holographic display. "Because your species endures. You have resistance to things we cannot survive. You adapt quickly. You heal fast. Your mind and body are unpredictable to others. That makes humans rare, important. Perhaps the key to our survival lies with your genetics." Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. It was one thing to be observed scientifically, but another to realize he and his species might be needed for the survival of another civilization. He had faced hostile species before, but the Valyrians' approach was subtle and unnerving. They didn't attack, they calculated, they waited. "Do you mean take our DNA?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra shook her head. "Not yet. We study first. We must understand fully before we act. But if we fail, we may need to find other ways. I hope it does not come to that." The weight of her words hung heavily in the air. Elias realized that the Valyrians were desperate. Their species was collapsing, and humans were one of the few that could endure conditions that might otherwise kill them. He felt a mixture of fear and responsibility. The survival of his people could be at stake, even without his realizing it. Over the next hours, Lyra guided him through more of the archives, showing him medical records, environmental studies, and genetic data of Valyrians over centuries. Elias noticed patterns he had not expected. Their species had once been incredibly resilient, able to survive extreme climates and toxic environments. But over generations, genetic bottlenecks and environmental stress had weakened them. Now, their survival relied on finding traits that humans possessed naturally. "Humans," Lyra said softly, almost to herself, "you are stronger than you realize." Elias looked at her, surprised by the quiet awe in her voice. "We are not invincible," he said carefully. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we learn. But we also make mistakes and we are vulnerable." Lyra nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "We have seen that, but still, your species endures. That is something we need to understand." As the day progressed, Elias began to observe the Valyrians more closely. He noticed how they interacted with each other and with their environment. Their movements were precise, almost ritualistic, and every action seemed to have a purpose. They communicated in subtle ways, through gestures, shifts in color, and changes in the glow of their skin. Humans relied heavily on speech, but the Valyrians had mastered an entirely different form of communication. Despite their grace, Elias detected tension. Some Valyrians avoided him completely, while others studied him openly, their curiosity unmistakable. He realized that the society was divided. Some were cautious, perhaps trusting Lyra's approach and valuing understanding, while others were more aggressive in their intent. It was a delicate balance, and he understood that missteps could be dangerous. Later, as the twin suns dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystalline city, Lyra led him to a smaller room filled with medical equipment. "I want to show you something," she said. "Not all humans survive this well, but you might help us understand our own limits." She gestured to a small Valyrian child lying on a table. The child's skin was pale and slightly translucent, veins visible beneath the surface. Their breathing was weak, and they seemed fragile in a way that made Elia's chest tighten. "This child fell ill from a common virus," Lyra explained. "Our treatments are not enough. We have medicines, but the body does not respond as it once did. Humans, you can survive things like this with minimal aid. We need to know why." Elias knelt beside the table, examining the child. He could see the signs of weakness, low immune response, brittle bones, and lethargy. He understood the stakes. The Valyrians' survival depended not only on understanding humans, but on finding ways to replicate or integrate the traits humans possessed. "Can I help?" he asked softly. Lyra's violet eyes shone with hope. "Perhaps. We cannot change the past, but we can learn for the future. You might teach us resilience." For the first time, Elias felt a genuine connection with the Valyrians. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there was a mutual desire for survival, for understanding. He realized that while humans were strong, strength alone was not enough. Wisdom, compassion, and careful study were also necessary, and he possessed all three. As the evening approached, Elias retired to his quarters, his mind racing. The Valyrians were desperate, their survival precarious, and he was at the center of their plans, whether he wanted to be or not. He thought about humanity, about the countless generations that had survived famine, war, and disaster. Humans had endured because they adapted, because they learned, and because they never gave up. That same spirit would guide him here, on a distant planet with a fragile species looking to him for answers. Sleep came fitfully. Elias dreamed of twin suns, crystalline cities, and the soft violet eyes of Lyra. He saw visions of humans and Valyrians together, learning, growing, and surviving. But there was also a shadow, a reminder that desperation could lead to choices that endangered both species. When he woke, he knew one thing clearly. The days ahead would be filled with questions, tests, and moral decisions that could affect the entire galaxy. Lyra would continue to probe, to ask about human genetics, and he would need to choose carefully what to reveal. Too much information, and humans might be exploited. Too little, and the Valyrians' desperation could lead them down dangerous paths. As he prepared for another day in the crystalline city, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humans were not only survivors but teachers, guides, and examples of resilience. Here, on a distant world, that resilience would be tested, stretched, and observed in ways he had never imagined. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, the Valyrians watched. They recorded every word, every gesture, every small detail of his behavior. They were learning, yes, but they were also calculating. Elias understood that understanding their intent was as important as surviving the environment. The stage was set. Human ingenuity would meet Valyrian desperation. Curiosity would collide with survival. And in the balance between them, the fate of both species would begin to take shape. Elias knew that the choices he made in the coming days could determine whether humanity remained untouchable, or whether they became part of a larger plan that he did not yet fully comprehend. And through it all, Lyra would continue to ask questions. Questions about his genetics, his resilience, his adaptability, questions that carried the weight of a species' future. Elias could feel it in every glance, every word. He was not just a visitor here, he was a key, and the locks he had yet to open would define the survival of both humans and Valyrians. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He would answer the questions, teach what he could, and watch carefully. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and they had always survived. Here on Atheris, that same spirit would guide him. But Elias also knew one truth he could not ignore. Curiosity, when mixed with desperation, could be dangerous. And the Valyrians were both curious and desperate. Tomorrow, he would face more questions, more tests, and the full weight of being human in a galaxy that had never seen anyone like him. And he would need every ounce of his strength, intelligence, and courage to navigate what lay ahead. Elias woke to a soft vibration through the crystalline floor of his quarters. It was an unusual sensation, one he hadn't experienced in the shuttle or on any human settlement. The vibration was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, and it filled the room with a low hum. He rose quickly, alert, and walked to the window. Outside, the city shimmered under the twin suns, but he noticed something he had never seen before. Small, translucent drones hovered near the pillars of the central archives. They were not intrusive, but their presence was precise and deliberate. Before he could ponder further, Lyra appeared at his door. Her violet eyes were bright, almost urgent. "Doctor." "Monroe, today we must go deeper," she said. "The elders wish to see you. They have questions about your species, your resilience, your genetics. They wish to know if humans can truly survive the extremes we face." Elias felt a chill. He had suspected that the Valyrians' curiosity ran deeper than anyone had let on, but the mention of elders confirmed it. The Valyrians were organized, their leadership structured and deliberate. To meet the elders was no casual event. It was a summons, a test, and possibly a threat. "Lead the way," he said cautiously, his mind already calculating the possibilities. The walk through the city was quiet, almost eerily so. The Valyrians observed them from a distance, and Elias noticed that even those who had avoided him before now turned their attention toward him. Lyra moved with a purposeful grace, her small hand occasionally brushing against his arm in a gesture he could not interpret reassurance or warning, perhaps both. They arrived at a building that seemed older than the rest, its crystalline pillars worn slightly, edges softened. Lyra gestured for him to enter. Inside, the air felt charged with energy. The room was vast, circular, and lined with translucent walls that displayed shifting patterns of light. At the center, seated on low platforms, were several Valyrians whose presence commanded attention. Their skin glowed softly, and their eyes seemed to pierce directly into Elias. "Dr. Monroe," one of them said, a voice resonating inside his mind more than his ears. It was the leader, or perhaps the eldest of the group. "We have observed your kind. We have seen your ability to endure, to survive, to adapt. Tell us, Why do humans survive where other species fail? Elias paused. The question was simple, but the weight behind it was immense. These were not just scientists. These were rulers, the decision-makers of a species on the brink of collapse. Humans survive because we learn, he said carefully. We adapt to challenges, we solve problems, and we do not give up. We are resourceful, resilient, and willing to endure hardship for the sake of life. The elders' eyes shifted subtly, communicating silently among themselves. Lyra watched him intently, and for a moment, Elias felt an uncomfortable sense of being judged. Not just by her, but by an entire species whose survival might hinge on his words. Your genetics, another elder spoke, their tone softer but no less commanding. Your blood, your DNA, could it give us what we have lost? Could humans help us regain strength, vitality, resilience? Elias swallowed hard. He had feared this moment. The question was delicate. To answer fully could put humanity at risk. To refuse outright could provoke hostility. He chose his words with care. Humans have traits that allow us to survive harsh conditions, but our species is independent. We do not exist to serve another. You may learn from us, observe, and understand, but taking from us would be a dangerous path. There was a pause. The elders did not react with anger. Instead, their eyes narrowed in thought. Lyra stepped forward slightly, as if to support him without interfering. We do not wish to harm your species, she said softly. We wish only to learn to survive together. If we fail, our people will perish. We hope humans will help us, not by force but by understanding and example. Elias nodded slowly. There was sincerity in her voice, yet he could feel the tension beneath the words. Desperation was a dangerous motivator, and he understood that fully. He needed to guide them carefully, showing strength without submission, sharing knowledge without exposing vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Over the next hours, the discussion continued. Elias spoke about human resilience, adaptability, and biological traits. He explained how humans recovered from injuries, fought off infections, and survived extreme climates. He told stories of human survival on barren planets, in deep space, and under conditions that would destroy most other species. Lyra translated his words with precision, but Elias noticed the subtle notes she added, observations, emphasis, and questions that went beyond his explanations. You humans, one elder said finally, your survival is not just physical. You endure emotionally, mentally. You protect your kind, your family, your world. That is rare. That strength is what we need to understand. Elias felt a sense of pride but also caution. Humans were not perfect. They were clever, yes, but pride alone could lead to mistakes. Strength alone is not enough, he said. Survival depends on intelligence, cooperation, and careful choices. You cannot simply copy another species' traits and expect to thrive. You must adapt, learn, and grow in your own way. The elders remained silent, contemplating his words. Lyra's expression softened slightly, though her eyes never left him. You teach well, Dr. Monroe, she said. Perhaps your kind can guide us. Perhaps humans can show us a path without taking from you directly. Elias exhaled slowly, feeling a measure of relief. He had managed to convey the message without giving them the wrong impression. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The Valyrians were patient, and patience could be dangerous when combined with desperation. As they left the elder's chamber, Lyra turned to him. You are cautious, she said softly, almost like a whisper meant only for him. I see why. Humans survive because you think ahead. You consider danger before it comes. That is rare in our experience. Elias gave a small smile. And you, Lyra, are observant. More observant than most adults I've met of any species. But your people, their survival cannot depend on one child's curiosity. It must come from understanding, adaptation, and guidance. She nodded. I know. But we hope to find that understanding with your help. We hope humans can teach us without harming themselves or us. The day continued with more observation, discussions, and guided learning. Elias noticed that the Valyrians were already beginning to incorporate his explanation into their own routines. Small adjustments in their medical treatments, changes in how they approached minor injuries, and even subtle shifts in how they moved through the environment reflected his teachings. By evening, Elias was exhausted but exhilarated. He had navigated a dangerous meeting with the elders, shared knowledge without compromising his species, and observed the beginnings of change in a fragile civilization. Yet, as he sat in his quarters reflecting on the day, he could not shake a lingering concern. Lyra's fascination with his genetics, while genuine in some ways, carried an undercurrent of urgency he could not ignore. He recalled the soft hum beneath the floor in the morning, the drones that had hovered silently, recording every moment. The Valyrians were not only learning, they were cataloging, analyzing, and preparing for every possible scenario. Elias realized that even though he was teaching them, he was also part of an experiment, a variable in their calculations for survival. As he lay down to rest, he thought about humanity's history. Humans had faced impossible odds before: famine, war, natural disasters, and survived. They had thrived because they adapted, collaborated, and never surrendered. That same resilience would guide him here. He had to be clever, cautious, and patient. The Valyrians were desperate, but desperation could be guided if one knew how to approach it. Suddenly, a soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Lyra entered quietly, carrying her crystalline tablet. Her violet eyes were fixed on him with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper, perhaps hope, perhaps calculation. "Dr. Monroe," she said softly, "I must ask one more question before the night ends. Why do humans survive in ways others cannot? Is it purely biology or something more?" Elias considered his words carefully. "It is both," he said finally. "Humans survive because of their biology, yes, but also because of their spirit. We fight, adapt, learn, and protect. We endure not just with our bodies, but with our minds and hearts. That is something that cannot be copied or stolen. It must be understood and respected." Lyra nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "I think I understand," she whispered. "Perhaps our survival will depend not only on strength, but on learning what humans carry inside them, the part you cannot see in tests or measurements." Elias gave a small, tired smile. "Exactly. That is what makes humans human. And that is what you must learn if your people wish to survive." As she left, Elias realized that the days ahead would be even more challenging. The elders would continue to question, test, and observe. Lyra's curiosity would persist, relentless and precise. He would need to balance sharing knowledge with protecting humanity, guiding a fragile species towards survival without letting desperation turn into exploitation. But for the first time, he felt a spark of hope. The Valyrians could survive, and humans could play a role in that survival without losing themselves. It would require cleverness, patience, and understanding, qualities humans had in abundance. And somewhere in the city, the Valyrians continued to watch, learn, and calculate. Elias understood the truth now. They were desperate, but they were also capable of growth. If guided correctly, their species could endure. But if missteps were made, if trust was broken, the consequences could ripple across the galaxy. Tomorrow, he would face more questions, more tests, more observation. But Elias knew one thing clearly: humans were survivors, teachers, and leaders. And here on Atheris, that spirit would guide him through the delicate balance of survival, understanding, and trust. Elias woke before the twin suns rose, the soft violet light of Atheris barely touching the crystalline city. Sleep had been uneasy. His mind churned with the events of the past days. Lyra's questions, the elders' observations, and the constant sense of being measured weighed heavily on him. Humans were adaptable, yes, but he had never felt so scrutinized in his life. Here, on a distant world, he realized the true extent of the Valyrians' desperation. The door to his quarters slid open before he could even reach it. Lyra entered, carrying her crystalline tablet with the same intensity he had come to recognize. "Doctor Monroe, we have news from the elders. They wish to speak with you immediately. It concerns your genetics and our survival." Elia's stomach tightened. He had been preparing for this moment subconsciously, knowing that sooner or later he would face the full weight of their intentions. "Lead the way," he said, keeping his voice steady. As they moved through the city, Elias noticed subtle changes in the Valyrians' behavior. Groups of them whispered quietly, their eyes following him. Some seemed nervous, others impatient. The atmosphere was tense, almost electric. The Valyrians were a civilization built on observation, calculation, and patience. Yet now desperation crackled beneath their graceful exterior. They arrived at the Elder's chamber, a vast circular room with walls that shimmered like liquid crystal. The Elders were already seated, their expressions serious, their eyes fixed on him. Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Dr. Monroe," one elder began, their voice deep and resonant, "your teachings have shown promise. Your species' endurance is remarkable, but we face a crisis. Our population declines, our health falters, time is running out. We must ask you, is it possible for humans to share their traits with us directly? Can humans help us survive more than by observation alone?" Elias' heart sank. This was the moment he had feared. The request was subtle but unmistakable. They were asking for more than knowledge, they were asking for humanity itself. He chose his words carefully. "Humans survive because of a combination of biology and spirit. We adapt, endure, and learn. But we are independent. We do not exist to provide solutions for others. Any attempt to take from humans directly could have consequences for both species." Lyra stepped forward. "Please understand, Dr. Monroe, we do not wish to harm humans, we only seek to endure. We hope for guidance, not exploitation. But the elders are fearful. They believe time is too short." Elias studied her, seeing both innocence and fear in her glowing eyes. He realized that Lyra, despite her youth, understood the stakes more deeply than many adults. She was caught between the elders' demands and her own sense of morality. "I will help," he said slowly, "but there must be rules, there must be limits. You can learn, observe, and adapt, but humans must remain humans. No force, no theft, no manipulation." The elders exchanged subtle glances. Elias could feel the tension in the room. Desperation had sharpened their judgment, and he sensed that some among them were ready to consider alternatives if guidance alone failed. After the meeting, Lyra guided him to a laboratory where the Valyrians experimented with biological simulations. Holograms of DNA strands floated in midair, twisting and merging as the Valyrians studied them. Elias noticed that some simulations included human traits, carefully isolated and modeled. The precision was impressive and chilling. "These simulations," Elias asked, "are based on human biology?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, we observe, simulate, and learn. We are not allowed to extract directly, but we must explore every possibility. Our people's survival depends on understanding humans fully." Elias felt a chill. The line between observation and exploitation was thinner than he had imagined. He moved carefully among the holograms, pointing out human traits that could not simply be copied: resilience, adaptability, problem-solving. "These are not just physical traits," he said. "Humans survive because we think, plan, and endure mentally. Any attempt to mimic our biology without understanding our reasoning will fail." Lyra listened intently, recording every word. Her gaze, however, occasionally flicked to the elders' observation nodes, small crystalline devices that hovered silently in the room. Elias realized that they were being watched constantly. Every gesture, every comment, every nuance of behavior was being cataloged. As the day progressed, Elias noticed more signs of the Valyrians' desperation. Children were taken for observation more frequently. Adults whispered in tight circles, and the city's normally serene atmosphere was tense. Lyra confessed to him privately, "Some of the elders are impatient. They fear we will not survive if we wait too long. They may consider extreme measures." Elia's stomach tightened. He had expected caution, but he had not anticipated this level of urgency. "Extreme measures?" he asked softly. "They talk about genetic integration," Lyra said, lowering her voice. "They mean taking traits directly from other species. Humans are the first viable candidates. I do not agree. I will not let them harm your kind." But the thought is there in their minds. Elia's mind raced. The Valyrians were desperate, yes, but they were also intelligent. If their calculations led them to believe humans could save them, they might act without consent. He had to find a way to guide them, to show them that survival could be achieved without harming another species. "Lyra," he said firmly, "we must find a solution that does not risk humanity. We will teach them, show them, but we cannot allow force or theft. There must be trust, understanding, and respect." Lyra nodded, her expression resolute. "I will help you. I know some elders will resist, but I can influence them. I can show them there is another way." Together, they began a plan. Elias would demonstrate human resilience through controlled exercises, showing how adaptability, mental strategy, and environmental learning could improve Valyrian survival. Lyra would act as his bridge, translating and advocating for methods that preserved both species' integrity. Over the next few days, they conducted simulations. Elias demonstrated human survival techniques, controlled exposure to harsh climates, problem-solving challenges, and strategies for recovering from illness or injury. Lyra observed closely, her notes precise and careful. Some elders watched directly, while others monitored remotely through the observation nodes. The results were promising. Valyrians learned to adjust their routines, strengthen their physical endurance, and apply problem-solving strategies that humans used instinctively. Children practiced resilience exercises, and adults modified their treatments based on human adaptive principles. But not all elders were convinced. A few whispered among themselves, arguing that observation alone was too slow. Desperation clouded their judgment. Elias sensed the tension rising. If they continued down that path, the temptation to take human traits directly might become irresistible. One evening, as the twin suns set and cast long shadows across the crystalline city, Lyra approached him with a look of concern. "Doctor Monroe, I fear some elders may act without consent. They believe time is too short. They see your species as the solution, and patience is hard for them." Elias clenched his fists. "We cannot allow that. We must show them that survival is possible without harming humans. We will guide them step by step. They must learn that understanding is stronger than force." Lyra's violet eyes met his. "I will speak for you. I will show them that your way works, but you must trust me." Elias nodded. Trust was difficult, but he had no choice. Lyra was their connection to reason, and if anyone could influence desperate minds, it was her. The next day, a council meeting was held. Elias stood before the elders, Lyra by his side, and presented the results of their experiments. He showed how Valyrians could improve endurance, recover from illness, and adapt to harsh environments through methods that did not require taking traits from humans. He emphasized planning, cooperation, and learning from experience, the true sources of human resilience. The elders listened intently. Some nodded, clearly impressed. Others remained skeptical, their expressions unreadable. Elias felt the tension like a physical weight. He had planted the seeds of understanding, but the outcome was uncertain. After the meeting, Lyra whispered, "Some will still resist, but your teachings have given hope. They see that survival can come without taking from humans. That is rare. That is powerful." Elias allowed himself a small measure of relief. Hope was fragile, but it was stronger than desperation when guided by reason. He realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just in endurance or biology, but in the ability to teach, inspire, and lead by example. As night fell over Atheris, Elias gazed out over the shimmering city. He knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges, more scrutiny, and more moral decisions. The Valyrians were learning, yes, but they were also desperate. Their desperation could lead to mistakes, but it could also lead to growth if guided properly. He thought of humanity, of the countless generations that had survived impossible odds. Their endurance was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and ethical. Here on Atheris, that same spirit would be tested. But Elias felt confident that with patience, strategy, and trust, especially trust in Lyra, they could guide a fragile species towards survival without compromising human integrity. And somewhere in the crystalline city, the Valyrians watched, learned, and calculated. Their desperation remained, but for the first time, Elias saw the possibility of hope, hope that understanding, wisdom, and careful guidance could prevail over fear and urgency. The balance was delicate, the stakes were high, but Elias knew one thing clearly: humans were survivors, humans were teachers. And here, on a distant planet, that spirit would shape the future of an entire species, if only they were willing to listen, learn, and endure alongside him. Elias woke to the soft violet glow of dawn spreading across the crystalline city. The air was calm, but he could sense the tension beneath the serenity. Today, the elders would review the results of their continued experiments, and he knew this day could decide the course of the Valyrians' future. Lyra was already waiting at his door, her violet eyes bright with determination. "Dr. Monroe," she said softly, "today may be the turning point. The Council will see that your methods work, but they will also test you to see if humans are truly trustworthy." Elias nodded. Trust had always been humanity's greatest strength, but it could also be fragile in a galaxy filled with desperate eyes. "Then we show them," he said firmly, "that cooperation and understanding are stronger than force." As they walked to the council chambers, Elias observed the city in quiet reflection. Valyrians moved with their usual elegance, but there was a noticeable shift in their demeanor. Some greeted him with subtle nods of respect, while others whispered in corners, their eyes tracking him closely. Desperation had not vanished, but it was being tempered by the lessons of the past days. Lyra's presence clearly influenced the younger members of the species, and Elias hoped it was enough to sway the council. The council chambers were filled with elders, their faces glowing faintly under the crystalline light. The room seemed to hum with energy, as if the very walls were alive. Elias and Lyra stepped forward. "Dr. Monroe," the lead elder began, "we have observed your guidance over many cycles. You have shown that humans possess remarkable endurance, intelligence, and adaptability. But we must know, can your teachings sustain our species fully, or do we still risk decline?" Elias took a deep breath. "Your people have the tools to survive. You are intelligent, observant, and capable of learning. My guidance is only a framework. You must practice, adapt, and grow. Humans endure not because of some magic, but because we learn from every challenge, every mistake, and every opportunity. If your species applies the same principles, you will endure as well." The elders exchanged subtle glances. Elias felt the tension like a weight pressing against him. Then, one by one, they began asking questions, practical, detailed, and challenging. How could Valyrians improve immune responses without genetic alteration? How could they recover from injury faster? How could they endure harsh climates without sacrificing their delicate physiology? Elias answered each question carefully, drawing on human biology, survival strategies, and problem-solving approaches. He emphasized adaptability, planning, and mental resilience. Lyra supported him, adding insights from her observations of the council's responses, translating not only words but intentions, highlighting areas of concern that Elias could address before they became misunderstandings. Hours passed, and the council deliberated. Elias noticed subtle changes in the Valyrians' behavior, less urgency, more focus, and a willingness to listen rather than act out of desperation. Even the most skeptical elders were paying attention, their gestures and glances showing consideration. Finally, the lead elder spoke. "Dr. Monroe, your methods show promise. Our people are already stronger, more capable, more adaptable. You have demonstrated that survival does not require exploitation. We see that humans endure because of intelligence, cooperation, and resilience. Perhaps we have underestimated the power of example." Elias allowed himself a small smile. The council was beginning to understand. Lyra's influence, combined with human perseverance, was reshaping a desperate species. "Thank you," he said. "But understanding is only the beginning. Practice, patience, and cooperation will sustain your species. You have the ability, now you must use it wisely." The elders nodded slowly. There was a quiet acknowledgement that the Valyrians' future could be different. Elias felt a surge of pride and relief. Humanity's example had provided not just knowledge, but hope. After the council meeting, Lyra led Elias to a high observation platform overlooking the city. From there, he could see the subtle changes taking place. Valyrians moved with renewed purpose, practicing the survival techniques he had taught. Children engaged in exercises to strengthen endurance, while adults applied problem-solving methods to daily tasks. There was a sense of unity, a rhythm of cooperation, and an energy of possibility that had been absent before. "You see it, don't you?" Lyra said softly. "Your teachings, they work. They change how we live, how we survive, and yet no one is harmed, no one is taken. Your people remain free, untouched. That is remarkable." Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "It is not just my work. It is yours too, Lyra. You guided them, helped them understand, and ensured they respected the boundaries. Without your courage and clarity, this would not have been possible." She smiled faintly, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "We are stronger together," she said. Days turned into cycles, and the improvements in the Valyrians became undeniable. Their population stabilized, illnesses became less frequent, and their physical endurance increased. The elders, once impatient and skeptical, now sought Elias' counsel and incorporated his methods into broader cultural practices. Lyra continued to act as a bridge, ensuring that the lessons of cooperation and understanding endured alongside the practical techniques. Elias observed all this with quiet satisfaction. Humanity had endured impossible odds before, and now their principles of resilience were helping another species survive. He realized that human strength was not just physical, but moral and intellectual, the ability to teach, inspire, and guide without coercion. One evening, as the twin suns set, casting long violet shadows across the city, Lyra approached Elias with a gentle request. "Dr. Monroe, may I ask a personal question? You have shared much about human survival. But why do humans care so deeply about others, even those who are not their own kind?" Elias paused. It was a simple question, but it touched the heart of human resilience. "Because survival is not just about the individual," he said slowly. "It is about the species, the community, the next generation. Humans endure because we care, because we fight for more than ourselves. That is what makes us strong, and that is what ensures the survival of those around us." Lyra nodded, her violet eyes reflecting both wonder and understanding. "I think I understand now," she whispered. "Perhaps that is what we lacked. Not strength, not knowledge, but care, the desire to protect, to endure together. Your species shows us that survival is not only in the body, but in the heart." Elias felt a profound sense of connection. Here, on a distant world, he had helped a fragile species rediscover its own potential without compromising humanity. He realized that the greatest victories were not measured in battles or conquests, but in trust, guidance, and shared understanding. Weeks later, the city celebrated a renewal ceremony, marking the stabilization of the Valyrian population and the improvements in health and endurance. Elias was invited to the center of the celebration, not as a conqueror or observer, but as a teacher, a guide, and a friend. The Valyrians gathered, their glowing eyes filled with respect and gratitude. Lyra stood beside him, her presence a quiet reminder of the bond that had made this possible. "Dr. Monroe," the lead elder said during the ceremony, "your species has shown us a path we thought lost. You have taught us resilience, endurance, and cooperation. You have shown us that survival comes not from force but from understanding, respect, and guidance. For that, we are grateful." Elias bowed slightly, overwhelmed but composed. "Thank you. But the true credit belongs to your people, for learning, adapting, and embracing a better way. Humans endure because we understand the value of cooperation. Your survival now proves that strength combined with wisdom can change the fate of a species." The crowd erupted in soft, harmonious sounds, a Valyrian expression of joy and relief. Elias felt a warmth he had never experienced in deep space or on human worlds. Humanity's example had not only preserved life, but inspired hope, compassion, and understanding across the galaxy. Later, as he and Lyra walked through the city under the twin moons, Elias reflected on the journey. The Valyrians' desperation had been palpable, their instincts for survival sharp and raw. Yet, with guidance, patience, and careful teaching, they had chosen a path that honored both species. Elias understood that true strength was not in domination or exploitation, but in the ability to inspire, to teach, and to endure without compromising one's principles. "Will they continue to follow these methods?" he asked. Lyra nodded confidently. "They have learned the value of patience and understanding. The elders see now that desperation does not have to lead to harm. Your teachings will continue through our people, and humanity's example will guide us for generations." Elias smiled, a rare sense of peace settling over him. Humanity had survived countless trials, and now, even on a distant world, their principles had guided another species to safety. It was a reminder that human resilience was not just physical, it was moral, intellectual, and enduring. As the nights passed, Elias knew that his work here was complete. The Valyrians had found their path, guided by the lessons of a species that endured against all odds. Lyra would continue to lead her people, and the fragile civilization that once teetered on the edge of collapse was now thriving. Elias gazed at the glowing city, the soft hum of life surrounding him. He understood the truth now. Humans were not just survivors. They were teachers, guides, and examples of hope. And in the quiet strength of their endurance, they could change the course of entire worlds without taking or harming, simply by being who they were. The twin moons rose, casting a gentle silver light over the crystalline towers. Elias felt a sense of completion, not triumph but understanding. Humanity's journey had always been one of survival, learning, and growth. And now on Atheris that journey had extended to another species, ensuring that life, resilience, and hope endured across the stars. And somewhere in the depths of the city, Lyra watched, her heart full of pride and wonder. She had learned from humans, guided by Elias, and seen the power of resilience firsthand. She understood now that survival was not only about strength or biology, but about intelligence, compassion, and the willingness to endure together. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the calm settle over him. The Valyrians were no longer desperate. They were capable, prepared, and inspired. Humanity had not only survived, it had inspired survival in others, proving that endurance was more than instinct. It was character, heart, and wisdom. As he prepared to leave Atheris, Elias knew that the lessons learned here would echo through the galaxy. Humans had faced impossible odds before and they had endured. Here, they had taught another species to do the same. That was the true meaning of strength, not conquest, not dominance, but the power to inspire, guide, and endure. And with that thought, Elias looked up at the twin moons, a small smile on his face, knowing that humanity's spirit had once again changed the fate of a civilization, not with force, but with understanding, resilience, and the enduring heart of a human being.